Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee. It is April 30th, 2024, 1 p.m., and I'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of the agenda.
Resolved that the agenda for the April 30th, 2024 Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee meeting be approved as presented.
Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Latham will move. And Donna will second. All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes.
Resolved that the open meeting and closed meeting minutes of the April 3rd, 2024 Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee meeting be adopted.
Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Widner and Deputy Warden Jones. All in favor? That's carried. I would remind the committee members of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. I don't see any, which brings us to reports and briefings. So section 6.1 from the Manager of Administrative Services to Deputy Clerk regarding the Community Grant Program allocation recommendations. Catherine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to the committee. The purpose of this report is to show the proposed grant allocations for 2024 and to get the committee's approval so that it can be then sent to council for their consideration. For anyone who may be tuning in from the public, the committee is very familiar with its processes, but I'm just going to do a little bit of a brief recap of the process that got us to this point. So the Community Grant Program scoring process, it has been designed to ensure that the committee is able to objectively review requests of funding using a fair and consistent process. And this is particularly important as the program is regularly oversubscribed. So we often, pretty much every year, we receive more requests for funding than we have allocated for funding. So it's very important that we use a consistent process. The first part of the process is that applications are received and then they are screened for eligibility against a set of criteria that is laid out in the Community Grant Program application. Applications that do not meet this eligibility criteria are removed from consideration. Applications that do are then reviewed independently by each committee member using a standard scoring matrix, which is also available as part of the Community Grant Program application. Staff then compile the scores that they receive from each individual committee member to determine an average total score for each application. Applications must receive an average total score of 60% or higher to be considered for funding. If they do not receive this, then they are also removed from consideration. A weighted factor is then calculated for each application. After this, a recommended allocation is calculated using the weighted factor and the total weights and available funds. Then a normalization factor is calculated using the sum of the weighting factor. And finally, after that, so this comes to each individual application, then there is an funding allocation number. So after that, the committee is then presented with a list of the proposed funding allocations to consider for approval. In 2024, or we received the applications in 2023 for the 2024 intake, but we received, so in 2024, there is $74,358 allocated in the county's approved 2024 budget for grants. We received a total of 29 applications for the 2024 intake period. 9 of these applications did not meet the eligibility criteria of the program or achieved lower than the average total score of 60% and were removed from consideration. There were 20 applications that were eligible for funding, and the total eligible asks were $147,500, so considerably higher than the $74,000 amount that is allocated. In the package that the committee received, there were several charts. The first was just an overview of the funding stream, so how many applications, how many eligible applications were received per funding stream. So we have, as a reminder to the public, we have 2 different funding streams, and within those funding streams, there are 2 different categories. So we've got community services funding stream and a festival and events funding stream. So under each, we have what's called a seed grant and a cultivate grant. The seed grant is for events that are new or community services that are new and have never been put on before. And then under cultivate, it's for an existing program or service or an existing event that is running again. So we did not receive any applications for community services seed. So there were There was a 0 ask and a 0 proposed budget. For community services cultivate, so existing programs that are asking for funding, we received $56,100. And the proposed allocation for those programs is $28,281. For festival and events seed, we did receive $7,000 in asks, so 5% of the total ask. And the proposed budget for that is $3,529. Festivals and events cultivate, we received $84,400 in ask, which accounted for 57% of the total ask, and $42,548 is what is being proposed for allocation. So if further down in the chart, this is just, there were no, as I said previously, there were no community services seed applications recommended for funding, so there is no chart for that. But you can see in the chart for the community services cultivate, what you'll see is the total average score in one of the columns, what their ask was, the weighting factor, and then what the recommended allocation was. So for community services cultivate, again, the entire amount is $28,281 for the entire group of them, and their proposed allocations based on your scores are there. Below for festivals and events, it's the same, except we did receive ask for seed funding, so for new. And the only one in that category was the Tyrconnell Heritage Society in the Bacchus page. And so the recommended allocation for that is $3,529. We then have our, I think, biggest category, which is the festivals and events cultivate. So those existing festivals and events asking for funding. And we can see in the columns, the total average scores, what their ask was, and then of course, what the recommended allocation based on the weighting factor is. So for that category in total, $42,548 is proposed to be allocated. The financial implications are just that we will stay within the proposed budget of $74,358. And after the committee considers these allocations and approves them, they will go to County Council for consideration as well. After Council's decision, letters will be sent to both the successful and unsuccessful applicants. Successful applicants will also receive a funding contract, which they will need to fill out and return to us. And then funding will be released. So just in conclusion, the committee very diligently reviewed all applications this year. And after this diligent consideration, they submitted their individual scores for the application process, and the scores were combined, and that is how the proposed allocations in the charts before the committee and the public today were received. I would be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Catherine. Does anyone on the committee have any questions, concerns? Pleased with the allocations? Yes, Deputy Warden Jones.
Just a comment, it just pretty much as suspected, really,
Yeah,
from my perspective anyway.
well, absolutely. And I would agree with you. I was just, while she was going through a report, I was comparing my results with the overall average and thought, well, it is what it is. And this is why it's done this way. So you take all these independent scores and average them out and weigh them. And I don't know of a fairer model on how to do it. Perhaps Catherine will come up with something. Any additional comments, concerns, questions? Going to get away easy. For now, okay. Hearing no further comments, then we have a motion before us.
Resolved that the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee endorse the community grant program allocations as presented, and that the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee Chair be directed to present the proposed grant allocations to County Council for approval.
Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Warden Jones and Councillor Widner will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have no other business or correspondence. We have no. We already did the closed meeting minutes. So let's move on to the date of the next meeting. And it appears to be held at the call of the chair. If that's to everyone's satisfaction. I think, give it a couple of months or so, I think staff would like a little breathing room in order to have time to make some considerations to adjusting the application process and or the program itself. And I think we need to have a further discussion on it. Yeah, Deputy Warden?
Uh, Just something for staff to consider is putting a cap on the maximum amount of the ask,
Hmm.
possibly. Might be something we want to consider, considering the pressure we're getting.
Yeah.
It's only probably going to increase, I'm guessing, but
I think you're right. I think the current cap that's in there is at $10,000, and I think that's why they're asking for it, because they know they're not going to get it. And, but we need to find I think a complete review, if not overhaul, the program, its objectives, and make recommendations to council going forward, I think is needed. I do. Okay. This could be one of the quickest rural initiative committees that I've ever had. So it brings us to the adjournment motion, unless someone has something else they wish to bring up beforehand. Okay, Catherine, please.
Resolved that we do now adjourn at 1:13 PM to meet again at the call of the chair.
Mover and seconder. Donna Lund will move. Deputy Warden Jones will second. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you for the quick meeting. Have a good day.